Riqui Puig has been named to the Barca bench 7 times this season, featuring for the last 3 minutes against Getafe as his only appearance of the year. More alarmingly, he was dropped completely against Alaves and left in Barcelona to train. For those calling for Puig to get more minutes, it appears that he's being pushed farther to the periphery of the squad. Lionel hasn't featured at all this season, and even with 5 substitutes, it doesn't seem like Koeman has intended to use him either, more regularly warming up Conrad de la Fuente in front of Lionel. The 22-year-old Lionel was hard done by after he started and played just 45 minutes in the first match of the season last year against Athletic Club. The supposed minutes that he had earned in the preseason all but vanished, and he was sent out on loan to Real Betis in January. There he made 19 appearances, scoring 1 goal and providing 2 assists, regularly showing enough to consider that loan a success. In his return to Barca, though, the preseason was an early indication that there were too many cooks in the kitchen, or at least for the double pivot. De Jong, Busquets, Pjanic, Puig, Lionel, and Mateus Fernandes, in that order, is a lot of players for 2 spots. I'm not sure if Lionel was really above Puig on the depth chart, or Koeman preferred to use Lionel as an option in case of emergency, and have Puig to be the one to go out on loan this time for experience. Either way, Puig was told he wasn't going to get minutes and advised to seek some playing time elsewhere this season. He refused, saying he wanted to fight for his spot. He isn't winning that fight yet, but remember, that was 2 months ago, and the season is long. Though realistically, another referendum should be had in January if minutes still haven't come for the 21-year-old, I guess outside of the Copa del Rey. So we all understand the reasons that have been given for Puig not playing, and why he opted to stay, but it seems many Culers can't understand why Koeman isn't using him. First things first, the most natural way to frame that question is through the obvious. How is Puig not getting minutes over insert similar player here? That player has been another young playmaker in Pedri, but I think that's unfair to both of them and oversimplifies their differences. They are both quite skillful, playing for Spain's U21s as well, and while Pedri is a little more than 3 years younger than Puig, they both have incredibly bright futures. But as far as their roles on the field, the way they defend is fundamentally different, in my opinion at least. Puig has always most comfortably operated in the middle of the park, defending by cutting off the passing lanes, and if the pass is completed, trying to get in a tackle. The tendency he has to do this goes against the notion that he's too small, a lazy analysis of the player. But I will concede that he isn't exactly your prototypical destroyer in a double pivot, the kind of player that Koeman seemingly needs but doesn't have. Pedri, meanwhile, defends more naturally in an inside then outside kind of way, helping to double attackers with fullbacks with more frequency, and more often using the sideline as his defensive reference point. The defensive differences feel like I'm splitting hairs, but they underline the big issue with comparing the two. Pedri's versatility has seen him deployed all across the 3 behind the striker, and while he is probably at his best in the middle, that spot has been occupied by Messi and Coutinho. Pedri played on the left wing as an inverted winger for Las Palmas, but that spot is being occupied by Ansu Fati. On the right is direct competition with Dembele and Trincao. The front 4 has a lot of bodies, and the claim that Puig should be in that spot in the middle neglects that it's not necessarily Pedri's minutes that would disappear, but Messi or Coutinho's. The final point on Pedri, he has earned his minutes. By comparing Pedri and Puig, you force people to take sides. But I think if you really want to talk about players who are keeping Puig out of the squad, you're really talking about Sergio Busquets and Lionel Messi. The change in formation to a 4-2-3-1 was the best formation to get the most out of the players at Koeman's disposal. Part of Bartomeu's legacy is having Messi, Griezmann, and Coutinho in the team, when only 2 of the 3 superstars make any sense together, and you could argue that Messi and Griezmann will never make sense. But still, the 4-2-3-1 is the best attempt at making that work. The team was frail defensively, an aging squad without the legs to cut out the counterattacks that have taken over in world football, as the answer to Pep's dominant possession and complex positional play. The double pivot, at least in theory, means that De Jong and Busquets will always have cover for one another, and allow more versatility to the press. It's a crazy thought though. How is it possible that Busquets, the defensive midfielder that redefined the position at the base of a 4-3-3, must now operate in a double pivot due to his limitations? Those limitations are largely his aging body, yes, but it's also the way that the game is changing, even over the last few seasons. You have to do what's best for everyone around. I still think Busquets could still function in a 4-3-3, but then you need very mobile center backs to cover, which Piqué and Lenglet are not, and you need a total effort in front of Busquets to pressure the ball before the opponent is allowed to get out of their own end. This isn't a video about Messi, because there's a lot to talk about with his season so far, good and bad, but I think we can all agree that his defensive effort does leave holes that opponents have learned to exploit. And that often leaves Busquets on an island, with a player 10 years his junior and quite a few steps quicker. And that brings us back to Puig. Koeman is trying his best to make things work for the largest number of players, especially Messi, De Jong, Piqué, Lenglet, and even Busquets. And while the team hasn't been great, they are creating chances, and just not putting them home. I know many will yell, out with the old and in with the new, but there is plenty of new. Puig just isn't one of them at the moment. And that's because of Messi. I'm not blaming Messi for being Messi, but this season he is basically setting up as an attacking midfielder, dropping deep as a central midfielder, and defending as a center forward. With Messi, Coutinho, Pedri, and Puig, you have redundant contributions, and unfortunately for Puig, Messi does that job as a central playmaker a lot better. And Pedri, for his versatility and own star potential, is complementing the Argentine at the moment and earning minutes. It's interesting to me that Koeman was trying out Puig in that double pivot, asking him to slide back for the 4th time in his young career and learn another new position. Whether we're not being patient enough for him to learn the position because we are, or he will never naturally fit there, I'm currently rejecting the idea that he'll get any consistent minutes next to De Jong or Pjanic. However, things do change quickly, especially for a European giant in the middle of the La Liga table. With no president in charge at the moment, Koeman's job is actually safe for a few more weeks, but things could really get flipped on their head in January. Without the funds to bring in different players and having any leverage in player negotiations stripped away by the threat of bankruptcy, Barca may need to hold on to all their assets come January, foregoing a loan move for Puig if he has changed his mind. But if you told me that Barca are 8th in the table in February, there's a new manager, and they play a 4-3-3 with Puig again getting minutes, I wouldn't be surprised at all. What I do know is that Barcelona's issues at the moment go much deeper than just playing Puig. The team created tons of chances against Alaves, but finishing seems to be the most dire issue, something that Puig doesn't necessarily rectify. Unlike the last 2 seasons, Barca are flush with playmakers, and Messi is getting plenty of help in that department, but the goals just aren't coming. Barca are creating 13 chances per match, but need 6.1 chances to score a goal. Maybe if Puig was a number 9 like he was back in his youth, well, he's still young, and that seems like a good place to end it. I'll end with this. Puig still has time, but he's 21, and he doesn't have too much time. But comparing young players or assuming that Puig will be the answer to Barca's woes ignores the bigger issues. Francesca and I will continue to try to figure out some of those issues on this week's pod, so make sure to check that out and give this video a like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And as always, until next time, Forza Barca.